and environmental. Don't know who Vlad is. He is the UN Secretary General climate change advisor. So I give you the floor, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini, everyone. Hello from your little neighbor with a big heart. It's a pleasure to open this event, especially in the times like this, that we in our region were still able to contribute to such important processes as COP27. And this is something that we are aiming to continue. First and foremost, I also would like to start with an announcement, is that as the mandate of the current UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change is about to be expired, there is going to be a next cohort, and the next cohort, just like this one, will have a seat that is reserved for Eastern Europe. And this is also, among others, a great merit of you, all Ukrainian activists who were championing the cause of just and green transition, even in such dire conditions. We're making our voice more heard right now, and this is thanks to you. Now to why it is important to support Ukrainian youth and in general youth from our region to be involved more in climate negotiations in various capacities, including being in party delegations, so observers, and so on. It's that Eastern Europe as a region often falls through the cracks. In climate conversations, we have rich countries, so-called global north, and then we have the global south countries who are battling it out between themselves. And we cannot quite find ourselves in this because we do not neatly belong to either, obviously. And at the same time, because there are so few of us in these arenas, nobody understands the complexity of it. COP29 in 2024 is coming to Europe. We do not know where yet it will be, but it is important that we create an enabling environment for youth to be there as party delegates, at least 2 per delegation of each Eastern European country. We promote the initiatives such as Global Youth Statement that Youngo is coming with every year to make sure that we have more people from our region participant in these important observer constituencies. Like, for example, Vlad, who is member of the Finance and Markets Working Group in Youngo, and it plays a huge role in lobbying for good causes of youth engagement in those negotiations. And last but not the least, it is about the fact that one day, obviously, the war will be over and the reconstruction can be only of one kind. It can only be sustainable and green. And what it requires is that it requires professionals, young people who are able to deliver on the objectives of reconstruction. And this cannot be done without involving them and bringing them in and helping them build their own capacity. Thank you very much again for this opportunity to start with you. And I wish you all the best and good luck to you guys in presenting the statement, because it was received with actually rousing approval from the hosts here today at the start of the Youth Day and from other stakeholders as well. It's pretty comprehensive. Thank you so much. Дякую.
Thank you again, Vlad. Thank you for being here. You can take a seat. We introduced this global youth statement, and now it should be the moment to dive more into what it actually is. So if we can change the slide, thank you. Yep. Okay. So starting from what it is. So it's a global youth climate policy document. So it's actually a document that has been elaborated by youth, and its intention is to give policy advices and to give recommendation to policymakers, to negotiators, to parties, and in general to all those stakeholders that take part to the UNFCCC negotiations, and even more when we are coming back to our countries, when we are coming back to Ukraine, when we are coming back to our cities where we come from. It is also a document that gives statements and positions about how we youth envision the future and the reality in back in our countries. So we really suggest for, of course, for our delegation to read it and to act on the basis of it. But we also hope that there will be action to deliver it to the ministries, to head of states, so that the voices of youth can actually be heard. I want also come to the stage, Ilyas. Yeah, thank you. Also this this statement now has 15 thematic areas. Of course, those are thematic areas that have been found out, decided to be put there, based also on the negotiations that are ongoing. But youth is actually open even for more dialogues, more discussions. So this document is a huge start, but it's not the end. So we welcome also the involvement of youth in bilaterals, in multilaterals, or roundtables, any kind of panel that actually makes our voice heard. So these are the main topics that are in this global youth statement. How it has been elaborated. So actually it was an entire year-long process. We started actually from last year's COP26. So as you may know, last year during COP26 in Glasgow, the first global youth statement ever was presented at the COP in Glasgow. And it was a huge work from youth from all around the world. So hundreds of youth were there in Glasgow and presented it, took part in the work, but actually it has roots even in a bigger amount of participants. We saw actually thousands of people, of youth that signed these documents. We saw also universities, institutions that that put their name under this document. So it was really a huge work. And starting from this, during this year, from Glasgow to Sharm el-Sheikh, we didn't stop. We continued our work under the supervision of the Youngo constituency, which is the youth and children constituency under the UNFCCC. We continued this work. In particular, we in Youngo has a flat structure where everyone can collaborate to all the groups, the working groups, where they feel able to actually give their inputs, also based on the time and the capabilities that they have. And these working groups worked during the entire year to elaborate these 15 demands, these 15 topics. And not only, so it wasn't only a work of the working groups of Youngo, but actually it was also there were inputs from the COIs, which are the local COIs, from their COIs, which are the regional COIs, and at the end, in the last few days, from the COI. So the COI is the Conference of Youth that took place a few days ago here in Sharm, and exactly in that place, the Global Youth Statement has been finalized and has the shape that you will be able to actually see and read. These are the topics. I won't read them. And I will give the floor also to Ilyas to tell us some more points eventually about these key topics, and then Victoria and Valeria will tell us more about why it is important also for Ukraine, why it is important during the war period, and what our institutions can do about it. Thank you. Give the floor to Ilyas.
Yes, thank you. Slava Ukraini. Well, I'm here present with you. It is as to a young person, a young professional, this is my third COP since COP25 Madrid. But as Vladislav told, we have a children and youth constituency, which is officially presenting us to the UNFCCC, and thus since the early 1991, when the UNFCCC was formed in the Earth Summit. For us, what is children and youth for you? It is a question, because for us, we are a part of the for us, we are part of the population, just as other minority groups, indigenous people, people with disabilities. We have men, we have women, but we have also children and youth, which are a big part of the population, as in Ukraine, as a growing country, as in Earth. We have our own interests. We have our needs as well. And since 2019, we have been seeing a new climate movement emerging as Fridays for Future, because we as children and youth were understanding that there is no time but to act now. I will probably repeat the words of Greta, that adults are hopeful. They are hopeful that children will grow up and resolve the problems of the climate, but we will just not have time to do this. And in Ukraine, this movement have been emerging. In Ukraine, a country in a war under the Russian aggression since 2014, in cities like Kharkiv, Mariupol, not far from the former anti-terrorist zone. For us, it was important to be present here among many other children and youth. For us, it was about a future, but this future ended up by today in a war that is financed by fossil fuels. As many generations of young people within Youngo were demanding emerging climate actions, we could have seen today Ukraine living in peace if Europe was not that much shamefully addicted to the fossil fuels owned by Russia. Continuing our tradition, in 2021, the COP16 in Glasgow have put demands in front of governments, and we as Ukrainian delegation here present, also Victoria as delegate to the 16th COI, we have presented our demands to Ukraine, and we have presented also our demands to the second NDC. And probably we will just continue to do this because we deserve a place in the negotiations. We gave in the previous year 3 main documents: the Global Youth Statement of COP16 Glasgow, the Youth for Climate pre-COP manifesto, and the UNICEF Children and Youth Declaration on Climate Action. And this year we continue. Also, I would like to announce that during the next week, the LCOI Ukraine will take place in a hybrid regime. Members of the delegation of Ukraine and international youth will be invited to take place in the LCOI Ukraine 2022 during COP27, and youth from Ukraine are as well invited online. Thank you.
Thank you again. And now to Victoria.
So if we could change the slide, yeah. So now we'll talk about with Valeria, my colleague from the youth movement, Fridays for Future, about why this global youth statement is so crucial for Ukraine. And I'll hand over to Valeria at first to talk about why we need to take into account the demands that address human rights in Ukraine.
So yeah, the first point is that I'm going to tackle the problem of climate justice and human rights, as we cannot take actions without advancing climate justice and human rights. Severe injustices and violations of human rights restrict the power of young environmental and climate activists on the front line of advocating for the climate action. And I think a great real life example would be one of our FFF activists who has lived under occupation for the last 8 years in the Luhansk region and who cannot express any concerns or demands as any even minor disagreement with open disagreement with the puppet government can lead to grave consequences. So, and he has a lot to protest against, because there are serious environmental issues, acts of ecocide, and we can only imagine how many people on the occupied territories are oppressed and silenced and cannot express their concerns and demands, and what they actually have to undergo with all of these serious environmental issues and acts of ecocide. And I think that another point on that will be that Russia's war has substantially contributed to many of the crises that we Ukrainians and the rest of the world are living right now. So we're talking here about the exacerbation of the migration crisis, food crisis, energy crisis, humanitarian emergency, and all of this stuff. All of them mentioned has an impact on the climate change, and thus on the climate crisis. So we Ukrainians are already dealing with the consequences, and it's only worsening.
Thank you, Valeria. I would now like to highlight two more really key demand areas that are included in the Global Youth Statement. And the first one is in food and agriculture. We know that Ukraine is a mass exporter of grain and other foodstuffs, which so much of the world, 400 million people, are dependent on, especially here in the MENA region in Africa. And it is so crucial that Ukraine acts on the demands of the statement, because we need to use agroecological practices to be able to restore our already damaged agricultural system by the war. So it's and particularly our soil, which has suffered the worst. And in the long term, this can help us and especially our farmers adapt to climate change. This is also an area that we need to integrate in our nationally determined contributions, so our NDCs. This must be intersectoral with sectors like health, because the agricultural sector is crucial for a healthy diet, and it must be increasingly a more plant-based diet, which is already advocated by the IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And so that we can, besides food security, we can also unburden our health system to reduce the burden of chronic diseases, because as we know, our health system is already struggling in an unprecedented way. And finally, we also need to ensure that we engage as many youth and support our youth in agriculture as much as we can. And this, it has already been shown in EU countries like Lithuania that the more youth are involved in agriculture, the more we can accelerate innovation. And for us, this is also restoration from the war. And to add, we would also, something that we would also be advocating for is a legal framework that would criminalize the soil damage that is happening in our country, so that we do not go back to more intensive, more destructive systems which rely on monoculture to then destroy our agricultural system further. Now to hand over back to Valeria again, and we will talk about youth demands on the energy sector.
The energy sector. And as you know, The terrorist regime is currently destroying our country and has already destroyed 40% of our energy infrastructure. So, and this destruction is enabled by fossil fuel profits. So in this case, Ukraine must commit to a just energy transition and to renewables energy. For climate change mitigation, for European integrity, and for national security. The global youth demands that countries implement a moratorium on financing coal, oil, and gas. And Victoria continues.
And this is really important for us to be able to deliver on those Paris Agreement goals, on our net zero goals, and not only in Ukraine, but also for Europe, because we can only achieve a transition to more just, to more green energy sources if we cooperate with our already strong allies across Europe. And this will also help us rebuild while becoming a leader in the energy transition. And first and foremost, we need this to happen and start happening through Ukraine endorsing the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for all of you for also explaining why it's important for Ukraine. I would like to invite our representative from the Ukrainian delegation that is here with us to hand over the statement and really ask to read it and to act on the basis of it and consider the youth involvement in climate action. So thank you.
Thank you very much, guys, for your position, for your involving in climate process, in climate negotiation. It's very important for us, for Ukraine, especially now. And I think that together we will do our best for Ukrainian green and climate neutral future. Thank you.
Thank you again.